we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time listening, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast at any time, hit us up for any reason. Let us know a topic you want to hear, critiques, comments, whatever you'd like. Please hit us up on our Instagram or Twitter at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast. If you ever wanted to support the podcast, please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. There's a bunch of different levels there you can choose from. If you also are watching on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, like the video, all that good stuff. And if you are listening to the podcast, wherever you are listening, please give us a 5-star review. I know it sounds like a lot, but it does do really good stuff for the podcast. So thank you so much for listening again. I'm always having fun. It's always a pleasure being here with you guys. And, you know, it's January 3rd, New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. January 3rd. Anyone who's listening to this can be coming out January 4th, I guess. But the new year has begun. Tons of fun. Anyone who's been watching football or heard the news or, you know, even just through social media might have heard about the Damar Hamlin hit from the Buffalo Bills professional football player got hit in Monday Night Football in the game on TV and suffered cardiac arrest. His heart stopped on the field. They had to do full on CPR. His teammates were basically like acting as if he was dead. Obviously, if you're doing CPR, you're unconscious at least, and without a heartbeat, or not breathing at least, but no heartbeat. And he was resuscitated twice, they said. And as of right now, as of this recording anyway, he's still in critical condition. And thoughts and prayers and feelings go out to him and the family and his teammates and everybody who's around that. And, sadly, it got me thinking about, how dangerous sports can be sometimes, right? I talk about sports a lot in this podcast, and, it's one of those things where it's the ugly side. It's the ugly side of sport, If you thought about getting injured, you'd never go actually out. You'd never step foot on the field. You'd never go and play, especially a sport like football. Which I played. I played at pretty high level, and it's a dangerous sport, and never did I think that anyone was going to die doing it. I did actually when I was playing in university. One of my shout out Mustangs. What up, brothers? One of my teammates, who wasn't my teammate for very long because he actually had to stop because his heart rate went up to 225 beats per minute, which is basically your max heart rate, and he had to stop. He had to be carried off taken to the field. I don't think he had to go through any emergency surgeries. I think he actually maybe had to have some procedure done, but he had to stop playing football. So again, anything is possible. But most injuries I've ever seen on the field, broken bones, dislocated joints, concussions, many concussions, sadly. And I've had my own licks, don't get me wrong, but obviously nothing to comparing to dying. There's always a chance where someone could break their neck and suffer like paralysis. Like that's for damn sure. And I guess and each sport, kind of has different dangers here and there. Obviously, sports that have like sticks and stuff, you can get like fucking stabbed weird. I guess in hockey you can get slashed. Like fuck that goalie that got his neck cut. In hockey, like, yeah, there's always dangers, and again, no one would ever step foot, but maybe that's where some of the excitement lies, right? For both the player and the spectator. But again, it's one of those things where it's really sad when a player does get hurt, obviously, and you can have life-changing, life-altering injuries, right, that you carry with you for the rest of your life. Or you've thrown something out and you've damaged your body in a way that is irreparable, and only for a short career when it comes to your entire life, right? So I grew up around a lot of people who had long lasting sports injuries, my dad and his buddies and stuff. And you wear there's a point of pride to it and things like that, but it does never look comfortable, and like getting joints replaced and stuff and things like that. And I truly do see that in my future. I think that and I don't in no ways regret it, but I think that, again, you pay a price in some ways for those moments, especially in youth, because you don't really notice it as much. And I guess there's people out there that have never played any sport, let alone like a football or a sport that's extremely hard on your body, and had to deal with things like, I mean, truly my one of my most debilitating or whatever, one of my most extreme injuries was playing basketball. So it wasn't even playing football, even though it did kind of affect my football playing, which is kind of a sad thing. I have list of injuries, like, go back, geez, I don't even know where to start, really, because it always seems like since I've been playing a sport, I've had something going on. But I broke my nose twice in elementary school. One was just like fucking around in the playground with the boys, but another one was wrestling. So I guess you could call that a sports injury. But for sure, one of my most intense injury was I tore the labrum in my shoulder. So anyone who's listening doesn't know what a labrum is. It's basically the cartilage that's in your shoulder. Your shoulder capsule, like the bone, your socket is like pretty shallow. So you have this like ring of cartilage that kind of deepens that socket. And what your hips and your shoulders actually have relatively similar anatomy, but what your hips have in strength, your shoulders have in flexibility, and your shoulders trade flexibility for strength. Trade strength for flexibility, I should say, and hips vice versa, obviously. But you have all this range of motion in your shoulder, but it's not a very, very strong joint. And what happened was I was playing defense, and I got my arm kind of pinned across my body. I jumped up at the same time, and I felt something kind of snap in my shoulder, but whatever. Don't really think about it, but I could not, it was just like really pain. It was like a lot of pain, and it seemed like my shoulder was like dislocated, but I just couldn't lift it. So essentially what happened was my shoulder subluxed, so it kind of came out and came back in. But the way your labrum is, that little ring of cartilage, the way it is situated around your shoulder socket is essentially it can tear two different ways. It's a ring, right? So it can tear like a donut, it can tear in half like that, or it can tear off the bone. So that's what happened with me. The way my shoulder pushed out the back, it ripped that ring of cartilage off my shoulder socket. And I had a surgery full on surgery, went under. I was 16. They said that they were going to repair it, but when they went in there, they said it was worse than expected or something happened. And I fucking think it was in the incisions because it happened at Master Children's Hospital. Shout out. But I'm pretty sure they had a resident do my incisions because it was like, it looks like they used a butter knife, man. Like, it's pretty rude because I've had 2 surgeries on my shoulder now, and the second surgery you could barely you can't really notice the scars at all. So anyway, they were unable to fix it, and they're like, oh, this is gonna last you like, it's gonna last you like 2 years, and you'll have to come back, and we'll do the full surgery, no worries. And I'm going like, listen, I'm right in high, like, I'm 16. I'm playing at least 2 sports in high school. I'm playing basketball and football primarily. I end up playing soccer. I end up throwing shot put. I'm a busy kid. I'm doing a lot of sports. I need my fucking shoulder. So at the 2-year mark, whatever we were talking about, shoulder's feeling fine. Shoulder's feeling totally tip-top Magoo. No problem at all. Keep it going. Let's go to Western. Let's ball out. So I was supposed to get another surgery at 2 years. That surgery was supposed to last me 2 years, I should say. I pushed it for 5 years, and 3 of those were playing football at Western. And by the end of my 3rd year, and then my 3rd year is when I played Western and Beefs. So I was on the practice squad at Western. I was playing for the London Beefeaters. So I basically played like for 2 teams without the games on one, but I was practicing like, I guess that makes like 8 times a week. Really pushing it, probably pushing it too much. But even like basically at the beginning of that season, I was like, yo, my shoulder is dicked. Like, I need to have surgery. I straight up told our team doctors, like I wasn't even like, in fact, like throughout this whole process, my mom's a nurse and she knew this one doctor back home. I ended up talking with him, and he was like, oh yeah, like I think this and this about your shoulder, whatever. So I ended up talking to my team doctor, who's also one of our coaches on the football team. And I go, hey coach, like I was talking to this doc, blah, 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 this and that and this. And he's like, well, if you're going to listen to him, why don't you just have him do the surgery? And it was like, you know what, bro? This is fucked, man. Like, I'm getting surgeries and shit. Like, you need to chill the fuck out. But this is orthopedic surgeons, and all this bullshit for you. So terrible. It's like, relax, bro. But anyway, at the end of my 3rd year, I ended up going in. And again, it's the same fucking deal. It's way worse than anyone expects. But I guess 5 years of technology and, maybe they just were a little bit more used to dealing with shouldies anyway. At Western, they fixed up my shoulder as best they could. I don't even know how much it's fixed, to be honest, because they told me I wore away 40% of my labrum. So that little cartilage bit, I wore away like 40% of it. So I think they did what they could. But they basically laid like, hey, if you might be able to keep playing, but if you keep playing and your shoulder dislocates or something happens, you might lose the use of your left arm. So it was a pretty easy decision at that point, to be honest. I was like, you know what? If I can't play guitar, there's a bunch of different things. A lot of things went through my head, but number one was, if I can't play guitar, what the fuck is this all about? And, realistically, I was falling out a little bit of falling out of love with the game, sadly. But it came at the right time, and I had to stop. And that's a tough thing, right? Like, I'd hurt my back a year previously. I really, really hurt my back. That was a fucking another huge story where I was working out and I was squatting. I was just like warming up, and I had like, decent amount of weight, like 285. I think it was like over 200 pounds on my back. But at the time I could squat a lot. So it didn't seem like a lot to me at the time, but the way I moved my back, I was doing a box squat, and I did things a little weird, and I injured the fuck out of my back. Like, for all the kinesiology kids that are listening, I somehow injured like the facet joints in my back. So your spine has these little, if anyone's seen like what a vertebrae looks like, they have these little like protrusions coming out the side, and those articulate at each, between each vertebrae, and they're called the facet joints or the facet joints, depending on your pronunciation. But you have this little, cartilage membrane in there, and I like pinched that down because I essentially like hyperextended my lower back. And I like couldn't walk upstairs properly. I was banged up. I was banged up bad. And made my way through. That was actually the beginning. What was that? Maybe that was the beginning of my third year. Oh my God. So not even a year, that same season, I'm fucking busting my ass. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Oh my goodness. Shit. That's kind of bad. But maybe we'll get to this in a second here on a topic. But again, you're busting your ass, you're getting out there, blood, sweat, and tears, you're fighting, and then all of a sudden it all comes down to an injury. And there's countless guys that this happens to, right? There's guys in the States that their whole life is riding on their scholarship down the States. All of a sudden they get hurt and they're fucked. They can't go to the school that they're at anymore. There's no way they can afford it normally. And now that they're no good to the team, they get cut. And that when someone tells you you're cut, or again, you have a career-ending injury where it's over. My one buddy played in the CFL, and he played with this one dude who's a long snapper, and his kid had his pinky finger was so broken it came across the other three fingers on his hand. Like, it was broken as fuck. And basically the way it got to that point was he was playing in the States. He got an opportunity to try out for the Cal, some NFL team, and he breaks his finger in the training camp, and he goes up to the trainer, obviously hoping to get things fucking figured out. And the trainer goes, "Hey coach, come on over." Shows it to him. Broken finger. Okay, you're cut. Cuts him right there. Done. So buddy goes, fuck, okay. So he kind of heals up his finger again, gets another opportunity with another team, breaks it again. Cut. Great. Comes up, plays a few years in the CFL, does his thing, blah, blah, blah. At the end of his career, ends up having to get his finger amputated, now works on the rigs in Alberta. So you know what? There's these things where, what are you giving up? Right? How much of yourself, how much of your body are you going to give up? And that isn't, maybe that's an ancient tradition that certain athletes touch upon sometimes, right? Is this perseverance, this no matter what, this understanding that for some reason, for their own circumstances in life, whatever that may be, that's the only thing that they have riding on them. That's the only thing that they can do. That's the only thing that they're, and we sell, and America especially, but there's professional leagues in almost all sports. Like, we celebrate sports, like we do. We see there's value in sport. We talked about it many times, but there's something about this. I don't know if it's the spectatorship. I don't know if it's, again, like, people go nuts for sports, man. Like, especially in the States. But look at soccer. Look at how people are with soccer and shit. And again, there's these guys in the States that, they were their high school football team's quarterback, and they were the fucking biggest guy in town on the front of the newspaper. Everyone's loving them, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden graduates, doesn't make it to university. Now what are you? So again, whether it's injury, whether you've been cut a million times, just not your skill, whatever it is, there's something about it that when these athletes all of a sudden come to the end of the road and they have to stop, especially due to an injury, there's this identity crisis that follows it. Now, I'm really, really, really thankful that I didn't have the classic identity crisis of, I was a football player, I'm no longer a football player, what am I? I luckily had sports to fall back on. I luckily had school to fall back on, which was great. I was extremely grateful to have that. But again, there's many people out there, there's many athletes that they go through this identity crisis, and they need to find a new niche. They need to find something that's now going to preoccupy them as much as sport has. And that's really, really hard to do. Again, like I said, I'm really lucky with music because it has a lot of the same kind of like telltale feelings about sport. You know, you do things in your life where you know, like I like having long hair, but the times I feel like cutting it, I remember, oh, I like the way it looks on stage and there's stuff like that. Or people ask me, why do you have long hair? And I say it's for the music. You know, it's the same thing with sport, right? Like, why you eating that way? Oh, it's for my team. Why are you training that way? Oh, it's for my team. Oh, I want to win. Oh, it's for my own ego because I want to win and I want to be the best. When you remove that, what are you, right? And when you're left out there in the kind of fucking flapping in the breeze, it's hard to really see the other side of it and understand that there's so much more to life than sport. And don't get me wrong, if you do love it, and you know, many people love it, stay in it, become a coach, become a trainer, get on the sideline, start or continue to be in sport, but start putting yourself in that different mindset that maybe you're not going to be able to necessarily contribute on the court or on the field anymore, but you might be able to contribute from the sideline. And it's scary because, you know, there's more and more information coming out about long-lasting injuries, especially head injuries and things like that. And you know, you want to be really careful about that. And I think sometimes it's a problem when you do stay in your sport and you stay around other people who might have these certain injuries, things get really normalized. You know, a lot of sports, when you first sign up for them, you fucking go into it thinking, hey, you know, this is going to be fun, having a good time. Or you going into a sport like boxing and you know, like, hey, if I'm not careful or if I don't take it easy or if I don't figure out a way to protect myself better, I might have some serious long-lasting brain injuries. And I didn't really know that when I joined, you know, when I started playing football. You know, there's not like guys walking around punch drunk like there would be like around like a boxing gym. You know, maybe a couple guys here and there are a little bit ornery or they're a little bit crazy in old age, but no one ever really chalked it up to like there's something wrong with their brain. But now they've been studying this obviously now for probably over 10 years since that movie Concussion came out with Will Smith. You know, and it's been on everyone's radar. People have been talking about CTE, which stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And anyone who's listening or watching who doesn't know what that is, essentially it's a brain disease, injury, syndrome that you have from chronic injury to the brain. So you're continuously injuring the brain. You keep hurting it over and over again. And there's something really scary about CTE because it affects a lot of football players. And one of the big reasons it's coming out now is because a lot of players have been starting to, you know, unfortunately kill themselves, have serious symptoms where they're getting things checked out and they're getting their brain scanned, and they're finding that a lot of these ex football players have this CTE, which essentially is like a degenerative brain disorder. You know, I've seen brain scans, I've seen images of a brain that has CTE compared to a brain with Alzheimer's, and they don't look that much different. And, you know, I worry about anyone I know who's ever played football. And, you know, I only played like 8 years of football in my entire life, like completely. Like, you know, and that's not even like playing long seasons or, you know, crazy stuff, right? Like, yeah, I took a lot of hits to the head. Yeah, I got my bell rung. I remember, I think in second year in when I was playing, you know, and I was fucking feeling it. And all those games I played in third year, and at the end of the games, you know, there's a little haze in the locker room, and maybe you chalk it up to maybe the showers were extra steamy that day. But maybe it's also the fact that you just fucking rattled your brain, you know, for 50 plays that game. And again, like I said, I worry, and I hope and I pray that medical science is just rocking and rolling, and it's going to get us to a place where we can deal with a lot of these things that it's scary. Like I said, it's scary that a lot of these athletes, you know, maybe signed up for this, including myself, not necessarily thinking, like, you know, I never wanted to box. I never wanted to do anything like that. And you know, where I'm willingly going to get punched in the face, and knowing that, you know, look at like Muhammad Ali, and, you know, they talk a lot about old fighters that get punch drunk, right? Is what they call it, where they're just old and they're slurring their speech and all that stuff. And it's really scary. And, you know, a lot of these professional football players now are starting to come out, or, you know, maybe have killed themselves. Like Junior Seau is a major example. And, you know, he shot himself in the chest and left a note saying, "Study my brain because something's going on." And it's really scary that even in Aaron Hernandez's case, another famous football player who unfortunately died in prison, but he killed a guy really blatantly, obviously, and got caught for it. And his actions may or may not have been due to CTE, because when they did an autopsy on his brain, the pathologist said, I've never seen a brain with worse CTE. And he was 27. And he had the worst CTE she's ever seen. And, you know, I never really took like huge hits. I was never really in a position where I'm going to get crumbled. But again, they say low sustained hits over time, you know, can lead to this CTE. And, you know, a lot of the symptoms are forgetfulness, you know, fits of anger, you know, like sensitivity to light, all that kind of concussion symptoms and things like that, and suicidal tendencies. And there's so many really scary things. And like I said, I've seen my buddies have serious head injuries. Even that alone is scary. You know, you talk about Damar Hamlin, like there's I've seen some scary shit. I've seen my buddies' heads bounce off fucking frozen ground, and that's scary, man. And, you know, I wonder about old age. I wonder about what it's going to be like when I am older. And if medical science hasn't caught up, you know, am I going to look back and say, fuck, I wish I didn't play football. I wish I didn't do this. I hope not. Because right now I don't feel that way. But maybe I'm still tapped into that whole idea of what it was at the moment, right? Was you fucking put your body on the line to do this. Not everyone gets a chance to be out here on that field or on that court or whatever. There's people that were born without the skills. There's people that were born without the ability, without the means, the necessary means to do all this shit. So what are you going to do? Are you going to take this opportunity? You're going to fucking do something with it? And who cares if you break your fucking bones? Your bones will heal. Maybe your cartilage and shit doesn't heal as easy, but that victory, that glory, whatever it might be, lasts forever. And that's that gladiatory mindset. That's so different, and it's not always celebrated in regular life, right? And you don't have as much opportunity in regular life to experience that or cultivate that. Whereas in sports, again, that the microcosm within the microcosm of life that is sport, you know, you are able to completely give yourself into that gladiatory mindset that you're going to go out there and you're going to fucking spill your guts out there. And, you know, and sometimes I feel that on stage, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to go out there. I want to fucking rip my chest out. I want to throw my heart on the table and say, what do you fucking think of that? And and maybe that's the same thing that I had in sport, right? Where, you know, who cares? Like, if I have to run through this fucking wall to win, that's what has to be done. And unfortunately, running through walls leads to a lot of injuries. But again, like I said, no one would ever do it if they didn't put that in the back of their mind, right? Maybe they even think about hurting someone else before they ever hurt themselves. But injury, it's a part of the game. It's part of the sport. It's part of life. And it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how many times you get back up. Anyway, before I just keep saying fucking adages over and over again, I'll just cut it off here. Thanks everyone for listening. If you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast, hit us up on our DMs at the Bigmark Pod, at the Bigmark Podcast. Make sure you liked the video. Subscribe to our channel. Give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Hit us up on our Patreon, patreon.com/BigmarkPod. Reach out if you ever need anything, anytime. Go to physio. Go get a massage. Take care of your body. It's the only one you got, even if you got some sports injuries. Thanks all for listening. Have a good one. Peace. Peace.